Today, we are strapping ourselves in, metaphorically speaking, for a ride along the rugged coast of New Zealand. We're diving deep into a really interesting niche area of craftsmanship, the aluminum boat brand, Profile Boats.
Yeah, we looked at a profile interview with their general manager, Mark Hunter, and what we found is this fascinating look at maritime engineering. It's really not just about building boats, it's about a unique design philosophy. And it seems to be driven almost entirely by, well, geographical hardship and this intense focus on safety.
Absolutely. So the mission for us today is really to unpack how extreme geographic necessity, like specifically the demands of that unforgiving Kiwi coastline, didn't just create a boat that worked. It actually created a design that's now, universally respected for its safety and stability. We're going to explore how solving one difficult, very niche problem led to, well, global excellence in its way.
It really is the ultimate case study in necessity driving perfection, isn't it? The brand's whole beginning, its genesis, is rooted in the isolated lower east coast of New Zealand's North Island. That's a stretch of coastline pretty notorious for having very few, often zero boat ramps.
Right, which immediately shouts, beach launching. Okay, but for those of us, myself included, who don't spend weekends battling surf, what makes launching and retrieving a boat directly off a, well, hostile beach so uniquely dangerous?
Well, it's just so unpredictable. You're dealing with breaking surf, right? That can shift the weight of your vessel instantly. And often you're trying to punch through waves to get out or maybe ride them in to get back safely if the boat takes on too much water or worse, flips. You could lose everything. And I mean, lives are instantly at risk. It's serious stuff.
Okay, so given that kind of environment, what was the absolute immediate, like non-negotiable design requirement for the Profile brand?
Simple. The boats had to be constructed as aluminum air chamber boats. It wasn't really optional, it was a safety mandate. These air chambers provide just phenomenal buoyancy. They act like inherent flotation devices, basically ensuring the boat stays afloat and, crucially, upright, even if it gets swamped by, massive waves.
And what's really remarkable, I think, is how that initial, quite brutal constraint designing purely for survivability in the surf, how that's translated into a major universal benefit, a benefit for all users, really, regardless of where they launch from.
Exactly. That core safety attribute makes these boats extremely safe in pretty much any severe conditions. Mark Hunter mentioned that whether you're crossing a treacherous breaking river bar or, fighting massive swells way down in the exposed Southern Ocean, their handling is predictable. And crucially, they excel in a following sea.
Wait, let's just pause there for a quick clarity moment. You mentioned a following sea, often the most dangerous situation. For our listeners, why exactly is that the case?
Ah, right. A following sea is when the waves are coming up behind the boat, pushing it forward. The danger is kind of twofold. First, the stern, the back end, can get lifted by a big wave. That drives the bow, the front, down. That threatens to bury the nose or even pitch pull the boat end over end. Very bad. Second, if the wave catches the boat just wrong, it can push the stern sideways. That leads to broaching, where you lose steering control, the boat flips sideways to the wave. It's terrifying and highly dangerous.
Okay, understanding that risk really puts their engineering into perspective, and their location, Napier in Hawke's Bay, that just reinforces this tough mandate, doesn't it?
It really does. Napier is essentially the last easily accessible boat ramp before you hit what? 400 kilometers of seriously exposed beach launching only coastline heading south. So if you're building boats there, you are absolutely building them for people who fish in challenging, often remote spots, people who frequently encounter difficult afternoon sea conditions. Their design isn't like aspirational, it's pure functional survival architecture.
That takes us really neatly into the core engineering. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Let's talk about the structural specifics that boaties seem to love, particularly how they manage to achieve both stability and quietness. It sounds like they're using safety features as comfort features, too.
Yeah, that's the clever bit, isn't it? Beyond the standard tough aluminum construction, they use these foam-filled air chambers, and these extend right up to the gunnels. That's the top edge of the boat sides. Yeah, the foam, encased in the aluminum chamber, it's primarily there for flotation, obviously, but it also acts like incredible sound insulation.
Ah, so the foam is actually dampening the noise, the sound of water hitting the aluminum hull.
Precisely. It cuts down significantly on that oil canning effect, and that often loud metallic slapping noise that's pretty common in many aluminum vessels. So you get the safety aspect, plus a much quieter, more comfortable ride.
Okay, let's talk about the specific hull geometry, because this sounds like the real technical wizardry. They combine two things that usually seem contradictory: a deep V hull, paired with a low transom dead rise. Maybe start with definitions. What exactly is dead rise, and why is this combination so unique?
Right. Dead rise refers to the angle of the hull measured from the horizontal plane right at the bottom of the boat. A high dead rise, a deep V shape, is excellent for cutting smoothly through rough waves, stops the boat from pounding so much. But the trade-off is deep Vs are usually very unstable when the boat is stationary or just sitting at rest, which is, terrible for fishing.
Right, so high V cucks waves well, but it wobbles when you stop to fish.
Correct. So profile boats pairs that deep V at the bow, the front, with a low transom dead rise. That means the stern, the back of the boat, is relatively flat underneath. This flatness at the back gives you the stability you absolutely need for fishing. It also increases lift when you accelerate, and it's critical for that beach launching function we talked about.
But wouldn't flattening the stern compromise wave performance a bit? It sounds like they might be sacrificing some smooth running for that stability.
Well, that's the potential trade-off, yes, and that's where the genius of their specific design comes in. The geometry is very carefully calibrated. It's designed specifically to prevent that dangerous behavior we discussed earlier, burying the nose in a following sea. Because the stern is relatively wide and has that low dead rise, it provides immediate lift and support at the back when a wave catches it. It makes it extremely difficult to pitch forward and, spear the bow underwater.
Wow. What's fascinating there is that the absolute requirement to launch safely through surf directly informed what turned out to be a universally great hull shape, one that provides predictable handling and specifically solves that dangerous following sea problem.
It's a design fundamentally informed by the worst-case scenario. Absolutely.
Okay, let's pivot a bit now from the engineering specs to the actual business structure that supports this level of, well, rigor. Profile boats started back in 2003, and they're now a pretty significant operation, employing 22 staff. Their process seems just as intentional as their design.
Absolutely. And I think the key insight into their sustained quality is that direct-to-consumer business model. They don't rely on dealers or, third-party fitters. They control the entire manufacturing and fit-out process completely in-house.
Why is controlling the fit-out process so critical for a niche, high-quality builder like this? Doesn't that kind of limit their market reach?
It definitely limits reach, yeah, but it maximizes control and, crucially, innovation speed. Because they are one of the few alloy boat brands that's 100% finished in-house, everything, including all the electronics, the upholstery, the whole deal. They maintain total quality control over every single component. And, importantly, their R&D loop is instantaneous.
Explain that connection a bit more. How does the direct model actually boost R&D?
Well, profile boats are, as they say, 100% fishing boats. The design is centered entirely on the needs of the keen angler. Since they sell direct, the customer feedback loop is immediate and completely unfiltered. If a fisherman suggests a modification, maybe a better place for a rod holder or something, they can literally prototype that change the next week. They test it, and if it works, integrate it into the manufacturing line without waiting for, some national dealer network to approve it or pass on the feedback. Plus, the staff themselves are apparently mad keen fishermen, so that intimate firsthand knowledge is baked into the continuous evolution of the product.
That really explains the reputation for quality then. It's not just some marketing claim. It's actually embedded in their whole process, including things like a strong in-house apprenticeship program and the fact that every single boat gets a full sea trial before it leaves the factory.
Exactly. It removes the chance of, say, an assembly line mistake being missed because often the person who helped build it is involved in testing it. They truly own the end-to-end customer experience.
Okay, moving to market presence. You said 90% of sales are domestic in New Zealand, where they clearly have that ironclad reputation. But they do have an international footprint, notably over in Australia.
Yes. And despite the direct model posing, logistical challenges for buyers, they are concentrated primarily in Southeast Queensland and Western Australia, which makes sense given the large angling communities there. But honestly, their boats are found pretty much everywhere across Australia, from Flinders Island down in Tassie, way up to Darwin in the NT, across to places like Moe in Victoria, and Dingo Bay in Queensland. It's quite a spread.
That geographical spread is pretty remarkable for a brand that requires Australian customers to essentially buy sight unseen, right?
Yeah.
How do they overcome that trust hurdle when a potential customer can't just walk into a dealership showroom and kick the tires, so to speak?
Yeah, it relies entirely on reputation. As Mark Hunter himself noted, customers have to put their faith in our reputation. Simple as that. The reassurance seems to come mostly from existing owners and testimonials. Apparently, customers often express genuine surprise upon delivery, not just at the sheer physical size of the boat, which can be hard to grasp from photos, but really at the immense attention to detail. And importantly, they provide full factory-backed warranties in Australia, which definitely helps mitigate the risk of being a long-distance customer.
Okay, let's spotlight their most popular seller then, the 635H model. It's mid-sized, and apparently 95% of their boats are sold as hardtops, which again speaks to that need for protection and robustness in tough conditions, I suppose.
Yeah, the 635H really encapsulates all their core philosophies. The deck layout, for instance, is particularly clever for the serious angler. They utilize the tow space and the side air chambers to maximize usable deck area.
Tow space, what exactly does that entail? How does that work?
Okay, imagine you're standing at the side of the boat, maybe leaning over, fighting a fish. To get good leverage, you want your toes tucked under the gunnel, under that top edge, for stability. By building out the side air chambers but creating that recess underneath, that's the toe space, it allows the angler to stand closer to the railing, maximizing their leverage and footing. It makes a huge difference to your sure-footedness, especially when you're reeling in a big catch in potentially sloppy seas.
Ah, okay. That's a detail you probably only get from engineers who are also serious fishermen themselves. What other features stand out on the 635H?
Well, you also see features like the deluxe bait board, which is usually pretty well thought out, and they have a unique transom wave deflector design. That deflector is positioned strategically at the back to knock down following seas and spray that might otherwise wash into the cockpit area. It ties right back to their original core mission, protecting the vessel and the occupants from unexpected water coming aboard.
So if you're a really keen fisherman, someone who demands maximum deck space, practicality, and an intrinsically safe design, a boat that won't fail you maybe 400 kilometers from the nearest ramp, the 635H sounds like a natural choice.
It's function first,
Yeah.
always, and the quality just seems to follow naturally from that focus.
Right. Okay, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for us? I think the story of Profile Boats is just a perfect illustration of how highly specialized, really difficult design requirements, like the absolute necessity of surviving a beach launch on an exposed coast, can force a product to achieve unmatched safety and quality. And ultimately, that creates a design that exceeds customer expectations pretty much globally.
Yeah, we spent this deep dive exploring how a singular necessity, that one core problem, drove this brilliant, multifaceted design. And maybe this raises an important question for you, the listener. How often do you find that the most durable, the most reliable, or, the most effective solutions, how often do they come not from trying to be everything to everyone, but from ruthlessly focusing on solving one incredibly difficult, specific problem? That narrow focus often creates this backbone of quality that ends up benefiting everyone, even if they don't face that original extreme challenge. Something
Well,
to think about.
a great thought to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Kiwi craftsmanship and engineering driven purely by necessity. We'll catch you next time.